What's going on, you guys? Richie here, coming to you guys live. Fitness for Mind podcast, episode 2. We got our guest here today, Adrian. Adrian, say what's up.
What's up, guys? How you doing?
Welcome. Co-host,
Eric
Senor
Perez.
Eric.
Yes, sir. All right, guys, really quick before we get the show started, maybe a quick shout out to our sponsors right now. First off, Ultimate Sport Nutrition, the beautiful shop you see us in right now. Thank you again, Angel, for letting us use the shop. Secondly, giving a shout out to TG Wellbeing, Will, Rick. Thank you guys so much for the love and support. If you guys haven't gone, go upgrade your membership now. Next up, to Professor Ron, Chula Vista Jiu-Jitsu. Thank you so much for the support. We appreciate it. If you guys are interested in getting some jiu-jitsu classes, go check them out right here on 3rd Avenue. Then our clothing line sponsors, we have South Bay Heavy Hitters. If you guys are trying to hit heavy, pick up a shirt today. We got them right here at Ultimate. And lastly, our newest sponsors, Mental More, Cole. Thank you so much for the sponsorship. We appreciate you, brother. We're looking forward to doing more business with you as well. So yeah, Eric, take it away.
Fitness for Mind, episode 2. All right, so our goal, the whole purpose behind this is to get the word out. Start talking. Start breaking the stigma behind mental health. And today, got one of our good friends, Adrian. And man, he got a story to tell. So that's the purpose, right? We never want to be able to feel alone, that we have to struggle by ourselves. So what are we doing? We're letting people share their stories. And I know this story right here is going to inspire others, because we were talking before, and man, your story is powerful. And I believe people deserve to hear it. And I believe people are going to get empowered by that. So that being said, man, tell us why you're here.
Absolutely, man. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you guys for having me here. You know, it's definitely a privilege to be able to talk out loud about this, and given some recent experiences right now that I'm still processing and overcoming. You know, it is honestly just a privilege to be able to have the space to talk about it and expand on it a little bit more, and to further the understanding on what it is that we have.
Yeah, share a little bit about your background, man.
Yeah, no, definitely. So one of the things about me is that, there's a whole lot when it comes to my background. I think that personally, one of the most pivotal things that comes into my life is just being a combat veteran. So I served in the Army for 8 years.
Thank you for your service.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
100%.
Definitely. It was an honor, honestly. So, having that part of my life just be so big, for me personally, it was one of those things that I always dreamed about. And I just never knew it was going to be something that I was going to capitalize on, really.
Yeah.
Until, senior year in high school, you start kind of evaluating your options. Yeah. And for me, school is just, realistically speaking, it wasn't going to be one that was going to go the distance. Mm-hmm. I wasn't going to be able to upkeep with it. I didn't have the discipline. Did I have the desire? Yeah, sure. But it's just, for that time in my life, it wasn't going to really. It wasn't for you? Yeah, no, absolutely not. So, I explored the idea of making my dream come true. And, me being pessimistic at that time was like trying to prepare for what obstacles are going to come in front of me and what's going to keep me from doing this. I decided to just, take that leap. And sure enough, that's where, that road began.
It's a big step.
Yeah.
Huge. It's huge.
Definitely, man. And, I experienced it. I remember going through boot camp, and in the first 2 weeks, I was trying to do, not a lot of people know this, but in the first 2 weeks of me being in boot camp, I was actually trying to do everything I could to get out. I regretted my decision.
You're like, yeah, reality hit.
For a lot of guys,
I was like, dude, they came on that bus, man. Those drill sergeants came on. They started yelling at me. I was so confused, man. I was like, why are they yelling? We're on the same team, dude.
Exactly.
But I was just like, man, I was hating life for those first 2 weeks. I got in a fight, at least one every 3 days. I was trying to do everything I could to get that process started of getting out, because I'm like, no, I can't do this.
I could only imagine going from just everyday civilian life, day-to-day living, and next thing you know, you got someone yelling at you 24/7, making you do stuff, and that's probably a shock.
It was definitely.
Were you mentally prepared for that?
Heck no, man. So, that's one of the things, too. Like, the recruiters would try to do their best to kind of prepare you for all that. There's a whole lot of steps and processes that they'll go ahead and prepare you as best as possible for that. I just wasn't participating in any of them. I decided I'd wing it and I'd be all right. So being, I was also, gang affiliated growing up at the time, and, having some of that background, I was like, I'll be all right. I'm going to figure it all out. But yeah, it was a culture shock for sure. So, luckily I was able to make a mental shift in there. And, that's where my military career took off. It really expedited in that sense, where I was able to just kind of be the best that I can be. And everything that I had been experiencing prior to my life, whether it be through my family growing up, whether it be through my gang experience, whether it be through my drug usage during my teenage years, whether it be through all of the, just the decisions that, was going on. One of the things that was coming on at that time that was delving in all of those decisions and stages of my life was the emotions that were going on, right? Just my emotional condition. There was a lot of anger. There was a lot of resentment. There was a lot of confusion. But yet, with that being said, I was also able to explore those emotions in an early on stage of my life that really kind of allowed my brain to create these pathways that gave me a better understanding than, most people in my surroundings, because I was willingly exploring these things.
And this was when you're already enlisted in the military?
Yeah. So then, all of these things were they were already taking place as a teenager. Yeah. And it just was, being in the military allowed me to kind of facet into all these different areas that actually resulted into something.
Yeah. So it's interesting, from an outside view, you were gang affiliated. You said you had some drug usage going on. So getting in the military from outside, you're like, oh yeah, you're all cleaned up. But in the mental state, where were you there?
Oh man. Yeah. In mental state. So I think what helped me was that I was starting to turn a leaf, so to say.
Yeah.
Right. I was turning this leaf. I was fortunate enough to reach this point where I was fed up with that life that I was living.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the resiliency started to begin. It really started to become into an actual fruition into things. So the military, I wasn't at the best state. However, it was very fortunate that I went in at that time, because what happens in boot camp in all branches is that they try to tear you down completely. It's like, whatever it is that you come in here, we got to take all of that away, because we're trying to rebuild you into what we need you to be. So it really was ideal that I was ready to be there mentally, and that they were going to be destructuring everything that I had built it this whole, years, and that they were going to give me their concepts.
So how did you take that in? Was it a good thing for you? Was it a new leaf being turned and you're like, I feel great?
Yeah.
Or was it a challenge? Where were you at during those times?
In that time, I mean, like I said, with the exception of those first 2 weeks,
Yeah.
right, that I was just a array of mess, right, that was going on. Once I got past that little hump and I said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to commit to this, and I'm going to let myself get broken down, and I'm going to go ahead and just, like, I'm going to be what I need to be.
Yeah.
And once that started happening, I was starting to, all of these good things about me that were actually happening even in those dark stages of my life prior to, were finally starting to result into something good. I was able to apply it into a better environment, right? With better goals, with better, in this case, missions, assignments, whatever the case is. I'm like, finally.
Instead of out robbing people, now you're fighting for people's freedom.
Exactly.
You give you purpose, right?
Same people.
It was a wonderful experience. Honestly, I needed that. And I think that's one of the things that I feel like, us as individuals, we need to take that into consideration. It says, it gets to a point where talking about it, it's not going to cut it. Knowing it, it's not going to cut it, because we are creatures that are tangible. We need to experience it. So it's that experience part where you allow yourself to get into this situation, or into this new lifestyle, or into this new chapter, and really just, that's why we talk so much about present, being present, and mindfulness, about being in that moment, because that experience, it's what's really going to shift inside of you.
Yeah.
Neurologically, physiologically, mentally, emotionally, you name it.
I've never heard anyone say that, being, talking about their military experience and talking about being present and being mindful,
Yeah.
It's awesome, because you got to accept it's a lot of changes going on in your environment. You're away from home, to new places with new people, learning new things, and to go in with the attitude of mindfulness, which is an attitude of just a true acceptance, a non-judgmental acceptance. Right. So what you're getting into, that's an awesome mindset to get into, man, to start there. And so tell us, you had mentioned that you did some tours.
Yeah, no, definitely. So I did a total of 4 tours. I did a one-piece tour, one humanitarian tour. The ones that were my personal that I hold very dear to my heart are the 2 combat tours that I did, both in Afghanistan, in RC South as well. And in that sense, that's where I was able to go ahead and actually apply all this, tools and all the stuff that I had been learning into that time. So I mean, it was definitely where I personally was able to, again, everything that I had learned, everything that I was experiencing, everything that I was, in this case, embracing and being present to take on in that time, I was able to apply into that, into those 2 tours, man. I was really, finally, like I said, experiencing what my best potential. I was able to see it into real life. And in that sense, that's where, in that moment, being in a combat environment, that's where I was able to, I still remember to this day, 2 weeks into my first tour, we got a rocket attack, and it's like, that you know what you're going into, right? I had mentioned to you guys earlier today when I was talking about it, was that I was on that plane ride completely crying because I was remembering, like, I was scared. I had fear, and it's a completely natural thing to feel, given that you're going into a situation like that. However, there was this part of me that was like, okay, like, it's disabling, and what I'm about to do, I can't let this happen.
Well, it's like you knew what to expect, but until you're actually in that moment, you didn't know what to feel.
Yeah, man. So 2 weeks in, that rocket attack hits. It was really close. I remember rocks and shrapnel just hit my room, and like it actually penetrated the walls, where I'm like, holy crap, like this is happening. This is happening.
This is it. I'm here.
I ran out of my room, and I remember feeling panic. So that's the thing that I remember. So when we're talking in the sense of being present and mindful, I'm telling myself, I feel panic. I'm scared. I look around, and I remember, I will never forget this image, man. There was these group of guys that were across from my room. They were special ops. So in the Army, we have special forces, and that's what they're known as, the Green Berets. Yeah. And I remember they were just chilling, man. They were laughing, and they're like, the alarm's going off. Yeah. You got the warning, rocket attack. I hear them, like, people are trying to go into their bunker, and I see these guys, and they're just like walking nonchalantly, and I'm like, what in the hell? It made me feel stupid, honestly. Yeah. Like, I was like, am I panicking, or I don't know if you guys know that.
Overthinking?
Yeah, that feeling where you're like, hold on, did I just like overreact right now?
I mean, to be honest, if it was me and a rocket hit where I'm sleeping, I'd be shitting bricks.
Right? One would say you were having a human response.
Exactly.
They're trained machines.
Exactly. Yeah. So when I had that visual, it made you question such a natural response, right? Yeah. Now that's where you start to see the comparison. Yeah. This is what they're experiencing. This is how they're reacting. This is how I'm reacting. Now, granted, I needed to acknowledge what I was going through at that time, for sure. Like I said, I feel panic, I feel scared. However, like I said, that image, that visual that they set, I knew that from that moment, that pivot that took on, where I was going from there. And after that rocket attack, at the end of the day, when I finally felt comfortable as I could to fall asleep, like, okay, I'm gonna lay down, I'm gonna go to sleep. And I said, like, I remember telling myself, I don't ever want to be scared again. I don't want to let that happen ever. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? And the next day we went on a mission. We were trying to learn the ropes and how to do this and everything. And sure enough, like in that case, I remember thinking, like, death is very possible.
Oh, yeah.
And I have to be willing to accept
and
that.
This was your first tour, right?
This is my first tour.
Okay, yeah. Gotcha. Okay.
It wasn't years later that I started realizing, like, no human being should ever have
No, like you 100%. You just said that nonchalant, and I was like, damn. I was like, I don't think I've ever had to really sit and be like, yeah, death is an honest possibility right now.
Yeah.
We know it's inevitable, but in your situation, kind of like, yeah, I might die tomorrow, but it's all good. Like, we'll take it head on,
And it was, like I said, it was such a pivotal moment for me to feel that fear that just felt like disabling, like I felt completely useless, in my body and in my mind and everything. That next day when I was in that vehicle, I was like, no, I have to accept that, death is an option. And I still have a mission. I still have an assignment. I want to fulfill this mission. Yeah. So I'm either going to not do this. And again, 2 weeks in boot camp trying to get out. How can I get out? Right? Fight or flight. Yeah. How can I fly out of here? Get out of here. Or no, I'm going to put up this fight because I'm already here. And I know what I bring to the table. I know what difference I make. I'm ready. I'm prepared. I've been training for this moment. So, at the end of the day, if it's not for myself, then at least I can make a difference for those around me. You know,
Absolutely.
I felt very strongly about that. So that's when I accepted death as a possible, you know, like, no, I'm willingly going to do this. I don't want to die, but, you know, I'm going to accept
Either
those
you or
chances.
them. I mean,
Exactly.
and
And it was, again, no human being should ever have to be in that situation. It was just what was going to very beneficial for me in my time.
So one of your motivators was your team, right?
Oh, 100%. Just the people around me, man.
Yeah.
I find out that more times than not, and I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this, is that we're more likely to do stuff for other people than when we are for ourselves. You know what I'm saying? Like, in this case, I'm more willing to do the right thing, so to say, or the most good Samaritan thing, or the most honorable thing when it benefits the other person, because, you know, that I can at least see, rather than I'm going to do what's right for me, because now that we start to get deceived in the lies that, oh, I'm being selfish, or, oh, hey, that it's not real, or I'm weak, or all that kind of stuff, or like, oh, I'm so needy, or I want this and it's stupid. You know, all those things kind of happen. So when we do it for other people, those things don't cross our mind because we know what we're doing it for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And, you know, it's knowing how to shift it, balance it, to know what you're doing it, that at the end of the day, you can't give out of an empty cup. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have to be able to have inside of you what you're giving into others. If not, you're just going off credit.
So I could only imagine the transition that you have to go through when you come out of the military and you had this team that you're literally fighting for,
Right.
and then all of a sudden you don't
You're
got
back
them.
to
Gone, man. So in my case, I was constantly moving throughout my 8 years of the military. It got to the point where I was already getting used to not getting too close to the people around me. I'm going to get close to them for the sake of the mission. I'm going to get close to them for the sake of the assignment. I'm going to get close to them for the sake of their sake. However, me personally, deep down inside, I'm not going to get too attached because I know I'm going to move anyways, right? None of that would have ever prepared me for what it felt like detaching from the military completely.
Gotcha.
You know what I'm saying?
When you transition to civilian.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
You know,
Okay.
So
go ahead.
you had thought that, like, okay, let me not attach to these people so I could prepare myself.
Right.
But then when there was actually felt like nobody, it was like,
Right.
oh, now this is a real deal.
Yeah.
It was a complete new sense of what we call relocating, right? Like, instead, we're not relocating on our place of our residency. I was relocating internally in my spirit,
Wow.
in my mind.
Yeah.
I was I was finally coming back to a place that should have seemed familiar, but no longer was familiar.
You kind of did like you did in the military. You're kind of resetting it back to civilian. Like, what am I
Exactly.
doing? Like, I'm not here going to sleep worrying about a missile hitting next to my house or waking up here. Like, I'm just going to find a 9-to-5 job. I'm going to go back to normal living and be a normal person. And
Yeah.
So how was that experience for you?
Honestly, it was really hard. In my case, you know, especially because like how all of our connections here, we relate on the sense of, you know, the gym community and fitness. That was one of the first places where I ended up feeling that first hit, was that all of the injuries that I had in the military, because of the less of the physical demand that I felt and being a civilian, right? I'm no longer having to perform to this high standard no more.
Yeah.
My body started to feel all of those injuries the moment I got out.
It's kind of that adrenaline kind of
Yeah.
settles down.
Exactly. So in that physiology sense, the brain finally started to recognize less of a threat, and the nervous system's like, okay, well, now we feel all this, right? And it's like, oh my God. So I remember going to the gym and I couldn't even go past 30 minutes without feeling discomfort, pain. And that made me feel incompetent. That made me feel less than. That made me feel different. I'm looking at my surroundings. I see everybody moving and just phenomenally, right? They're moving great. They look great. And, you know, I'm still okay in my sense, but I no longer feel like them. Now you got more disconnection from the outside people, right?
Gotcha.
You start feeling more of an outsider. I'm just coming out.
That comparison, man, it's deadly.
It is, man.
Yeah,
The death of all joy,
100%.
man. So yeah, in that sense, that's where I found myself having to. That was my first, you know, instance of what I felt at. My second one was connecting with people, you know, and in the gym, really, in all honesty, that was one of my. That was in that time would have been my greatest outlet to really connect with people, because now that creates a common ground.
Yeah.
nonetheless, all these barriers and obstacles were getting in the way of me being able to do that, right? I started to sound like those people that are like, nah, I just want to go to the gym. I want to get my workout in. I don't want to talk to nobody. I don't want to interact with anyone. I just want to go in there, get my workout, get out, right?
But there's no judgment. You guys are still cool. Don't worry. Do your thing. You're
no
good.
judgment.
But yeah, we get it. Yeah.
I personally am calling you guys out. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Yes.
I'm kidding.
Smile.
Yeah. No, and in all honesty, no, it's a very real place to be in. And that could be a very much preference. In my case, it was getting in the way of me being able to, again, progress forward, move forward, to make the growth that was needed for me in that time for this new stage of my life. What was working for me back then was no longer working for me in that moment, and I needed something new.
It's an interesting place to be when you're surrounded by so many people, but yet kind of lonely, right?
Yeah, 100%. For me, that personally was where my faith came into place. You know, being a Christian, that's what led me towards my faith, towards Christ even more. And honestly, it was probably what needed to happen. It wasn't very pleasant. It wasn't delightful. It wasn't easy. However, that did set up the arena for me to, again, fixate and focus myself on Christ, to really get to know him and him reveal himself to me through the Holy Spirit in that sense, you know. And that's where I really was able to grow in my faith. So if it wasn't for that time period, honestly, my faith would have never grown the way it did.
Yeah.
So as undelightful as it was, as unpleasant as it was, as difficult as it was what, for me personally, was probably the best case scenario for me to grow in that way.
So then, in regards to that, after that transition you made, came back and trying to get comfortable, what led you to get into personal training? You know, what got you to start doing that since you were feeling like this?
Yeah, so in my case, it was mostly because of my family, dynamic. You know, I'm married. You know, we're going on 11 years this year, and you know, it was one of those things where my wife was also trying to find what was going on for her, what was her passions.
Gotcha.
I wanted to create that space for her to do that. However, I'm a very purpose-driven individual, you know, and I'm not to mention, for those who know me, I'm very passionate about what I do. And that can sometimes be a very kind of like intense, kind of like, whoa, kind of get away from me kind of thing. Or like, oh my God, this is awesome. Like this passion is just so much fire, right? And I those two things are important for me. And personal training was one of those things where I had already been doing during my time in the military. When I first joined, I was doing that to get some extra money because, you know, as a private, you don't make that much money. So I took that experience. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I can try this out right now. I'm gonna put myself out there and, you know, really kind of just go ahead and see where this goes off. Didn't have much expectations towards it. And having been, you know, involved in the church before and having, you know, a ministry mindset on how I can serve others, how I can be the hands and feet of Christ and really just kind of like, again, edify, in this case, build up others. Personal training was my ministry.
Gotcha,
That's where it kind of started to expand into this, how I was able to kind of show people the inside of me, whether it be my heart, whether it be my mind, whether it be my personal workouts, you know, whatever the case may be, and just help them grow in that. I mean, in that case, you know, that's where, you know, personal training was my ministry. It was really helping me have that passion and that serving. I would say, you know, again, being completely transparent, and again, I think that this is something that we all kind of tend to fall into, right? In my case, my awareness kind of tend to kind of get diluted a little bit because of the feel-good feeling of how I was doing so much, right? How much good was happening out of it, that I began to, as I mentioned earlier, started to put myself as a less of a priority, right? We have all these good, you know, things happening, and it becomes about other people.
100%.
You know, saying, how can I help here? What can I do here? And it's self-gratification, really. However, now there's well, for lack of better words right now, not that I'm being accurate, but a codependency that becomes created in that sense. And you're not really tending to the things that need to be tended to.
Yeah.
Right. So in this case, you know, my struggles, you know, having PTSD, you know, having depressive state of minds, you know, having suicidal, you know, premeditated suicidal thoughts, and you know, in that case, and really, you know, there's all this trauma that comes along with the flashbacks and the dreams and lack of sleep. All of these things are happening to me in this time, and yet here I am, you know, in this case, putting a blanket over it about, oh, okay, but, you know, look at what it's doing. I may be suffering right here. However, look at what's happening, all the good that's coming out of it. So it's okay, right? We kind of tend,
I'm going to suppress it.
yeah, exactly. We tend to.
During that time, were you quiet about it, or
I was.
Does anybody know?
I was 100% quiet about it. I think that the only one that would be able to know that stuff about me during that time was my wife, because she was, she was there for those moments.
Yeah.
I was,
Partner in life,
completely losing it, man. I was somebody else at that point.
Yeah.
And I feel that's. It may be trauma for some, but it's a rough place to be where you're going through stuff, but you're over here having to bury it to put a facade to serve others. And I think serving it is definitely great. So it gives you motivation, it gives you purpose. But if you're having to bury it and not talk about it and pretend, then it's almost like you take on this own guilt, this judgment about yourself. And then you start to compare. It's like, man, I'm over here doing this, but I'm not happy.
Yeah.
These people that I'm talking to, they're happy, but why I'm not happy? I'm out over here helping people, but I can't even help myself.
For real. Yeah, no, absolutely. And that is one of those things that kind of come into place.
But who knows? If you would have talked about it, there might have been someone that was on the same level.
Yeah, it's very true.
So we lie to ourselves and think we're the only ones.
No, for sure. Again, and those deceptions in those time, like, again, not so. It is a very real thing, right?
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think you and I were talking about it a little bit. We were all kind of discussing about, how the feelings and the thoughts, at the end of the day, they're not facts. They're not real. It's a perception of it's a idea that's a perception of the reality, but it's still not the reality. And in that moment, when you're saying like, "Oh, I'm helping all these other people," or "Look at everything that I'm doing," or even it could be on the other side, right, where nobody cares, I'm all alone, nobody even sees me, they can't hear me, they won't ever understand, right? I'm sure we have those ones too. They won't understand. Even if I try, they won't understand.
That's
you know
exactly.
What I'm saying? They don't know.
Yeah.
They don't know. It's all of that stuff. That's not even real, right? Exactly. It's not real. We haven't even given it that space yet.
But we talked.
Exactly.
For 10 minutes before this.
Yeah, these guys just met, literally just met 20 minutes ago before this. So
you telling me your story,
right.
It's like, hey, you probably I've seen you at the gym before, and we walked cross paths, but you would never known that I deal with stuff,
exactly
too. And just by us opening about it, it's like you got one more person that's on your support team, one more person that can relate.
Yeah,
exactly. That is a prime example.
That's a message that we're trying to put out there, man.
Yes.
Don't make assumptions that you're the only one.
Exactly.
Break the stigma, get the word out, because not only is it going to help you build that sense of connection, it's going to help build that sense I'm not alone.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And man, it's just freeing sometimes.
No, definitely.
It's true.
It's
100%.
freeing sometimes.
It's almost inevitable in that sense. It's one of those things that you won't be able to experience until it actually happens. So
Exactly.
you're going to have all these reasons that are going to keep you from doing that, right? You're going to have all these thoughts and these feelings as to why that's not going to happen or why it's not worth it.
Yep.
However, you keep hearing all these things about like, hey, it's very helpful. It can free you. It can actually put an end to all this. However, none of that is actually going to come into reality until it's actually...
If you don't do it.
Exactly.
And we talked about that on the first episode, fitness for mind.
Yep.
It's not enough about just knowing that if you get in a caloric deficit that you're going to lose weight. You actually got to not eat.
Yeah.
4,000 calories.
Exactly.
So I said, I was like 4,000 calories of cheeseburgers, and Richard thought I was talking about him. But it's one of those things. If you don't put in the work, if you don't put in the reps, right? It's not gonna. Your body's not gonna respond. Your mind's not gonna respond. So
Exactly.
I love how you pointed that out. It's like, yeah, I know all that stuff, but I was telling myself lies, so I just didn't do it.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's what we all struggle with. Like, a lot of people get this. Like, a lot of people may even watch this podcast today and say, dang, like, that radiates. Dang, that feels. Dang, that hits. I feel, and still be like, but I'm not going to share it.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about it. I can't because that's a stigma that's out there that as men, mainly, we can't share emotions. We just got to be macho, strong, get it going.
Yeah.
And like I said, when I came clean about my stuff to my cousin Eric and, came out and talked to you guys on social media, it felt so much better rated and see that out there. And then, I came across your Instagram post, and I saw that and I'm like, man, that's Adrian. Like, I know Adrian's a happy-go-lucky guy, friendly dude, always showing love. Every day I give this guy a hug. Like, when I saw that, I'm like, damn, dude. Like, okay, like, I am not the only one. Look at what my buddy's going through. And it wasn't like he reached out to me. It was to everybody on social media. I'd seen him do that. And I reached out to him. Hey, man, you good? Anything? Let me know if you need anything. And Every day I check on this guy, gives the guy a hug. Hey, man, I love you, bro. Hey, are you good? Yeah, good, good.
Yeah.
And then once his podcast came out and me and Eric did the first episode, I was thinking, like, man, I know I have a lot of guests that want to come on. People have asked me. I'm like, but who do I want to bring on next? I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go talk to Adrian. Adrian is a prime example of somebody that is showing exactly, you guys hearing his story right now, what he went through, what he endured, experienced, you know, being broken down, becoming something new, and then coming back to the real world and getting here and realizing about, you know, realizing that we're hurting, we're struggling, we have issues. We're just not going to say anything, though. We're going to keep the smile and go. And that's what we all struggle with. And I feel a lot of people struggle with it, you know, especially in the gym. And that's why we come to work out.
And that's what's so awesome about this podcast. I see this community building slowly
Yep.
but surely. Now there's 3 strong.
Exactly.
And then the next guest, the next guest, the next guest, and someone's gonna come up and talk to you, man. Hey, man, I deal with this stuff too. Another person added it to the community,
Yeah,
and then
100%.
now we're coming to the gym, and we go, hey, man, we could actually talk.
Absolutely.
When someone say, hey, what's up, man? How's your day? Like, you know what?
Yeah, no, definitely. Man.
Hey, it was actually kind of rough.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of, and just sometimes just letting it out. You don't have to be someone's therapist, but
No.
just being able to be real with someone
No,
for
for,
a second.
for sure. I mean, that's one of the biggest things too, is that me knowing, because I eventually, even though having given my most recent experience as far as where I was, I felt like, hey, I'm struggling, I feel defeated. This is what's been happening for the past 2 weeks, and I want to hold myself accountable by telling you guys, right? Aside from that, I have developed a small, support system. It's just that, dude,
Awesome.
They and here's another one of those things that I want to kind of bring up to all of us here in that sense, is that, shifts happen, dude. Those shifts tend to kind of like make it appear a certain way. So in my case in that time is that the reality was that those people were there in that time frame, and they still are. However, again, the dynamic might feel a little bit different.
Yeah.
If that's your case, right, where you did have that, you do have that, that support system, but it feels a little bit different, and it feels like you can't no longer like, okay, I used to be able to talk to this person about this stuff, but they're a little too busy right now.
Yeah.
Or maybe maybe it's just, maybe they might, given their mindset kind of change, right, their life kind of changed, so they might not agree with me, or you don't want to disappoint them, right? Now we got too close. Now I care about what they think, right?
Exactly.
And I'm not.
Yeah.
Now I used to feel comfortable sharing, but now I care a little bit too much about what they think about me.
You.
Dude, if that's happening, man, I'm telling you, this is what happened in this most recent time that I shared about what I was going through. It was not my intention. My intention was to hold myself accountable. In that sense, I can't help others and instruct them to do this when I'm not doing it, right? So I had to put myself in that situation. However, what I was not expecting from this, right, in doing this was the amount of feedback that I got.
Bro,
the amount of people that reached out.
Crazy,
oh
right?
My God, like
Surprised you, right?
I'm slowly, I'm slowly just fighting back tears right now because
man,
I was
okay.
so humbled. Like I said, I was not trying to get people to reach out to me. That's not what was going on in my head at that time. But the fact that once that started happening, and I started like, dude, these are people that I see every day at the gym. We grind out together. We bust out workouts. We work in, we work out, we talk, we do little haze, we do little highs. Man, I know that there's a lot of times that we gonna kind of like try to inform people and warn people about like, hey, like those people don't really care about you. But no, I'm here to tell you guys, it's quite the opposite, man.
Yeah.
We actually have a lot more in common.
Yeah, I don't know why we make these assumptions.
Dude.
Like, it's like we just assume no one's gonna care, someone's gonna judge. But I think I could actually say this with confidence. Every time that I made those assumptions that no one's gonna care, they're gonna judge me, I've been usually met with open arms. And them caring.
Yeah, man.
It's the complete opposite of what you think it
Dude,
is.
let them prove, like in that point, if you're so convinced about that, get ready to do it to be proved wrong.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If you're that convinced about it, prove it. But I'm telling you right now, prepare yourself to be wrong, because I'm telling you, that lie has been going on for years now, and we continue to let it be really it's freaking, what do you call when it's fake money? What's the term for that? Counterfeit. It's a counterfeit idea.
It's a lie. It's just 100%. It's a lie to us. Like we think we can't.
And we've been letting it happen for far too long.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
And we want to isolate. It's just almost feels natural, right? In those moments to isolate. Isolate in our own mind, isolate in our feelings, isolate physically. That's the worst thing you can do at the time. Sometimes just being around somebody.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying, like we spoke about when you mentioned feelings does not equal facts. Thoughts do not equal facts. So when we tell ourselves we're alone, we're alone, we're alone, we're alone, are we really?
Right.
What if I just opened my mouth and shared something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's very true.
Take that chance, man. Just honestly, just take that chance, because I'm telling you, if you take that chance and you're right that you are alone, then in that sense, what we are dealing with is the confirmation, the feeling of confirmation of like, okay, now I got to go through this twice. I was already worried that I was going to get rejected or not cared for. And now I'm experiencing this. So now we're going through it twice. So then why put yourself through that 2 times? Why not just eliminate the first part, take that chance, and let that moment speak for itself? That's what's going to become the reality. It's no longer a feeling. It's no longer a thought.